What if I showed you two replays, one of a jungler who prioritizes taking the new Void Grub objective, and another who intentionally gives them up in favor of making ganks for their team? Would you know which of these two strategies is the best to be doing on the current patch? In today's video, we'll be answering all of these questions, ranging from when and why to take the grubs, when to gank, when to ignore it all and just farm, and how the addition of League's newest neutral objective should be changing your pathing. We've got some pretty crazy replays, all coming from high-low games, so sit back, relax while we answer the question, to grub or not to grub.
My name's Rogue and I played League of Legends professionally for 7 years. Now I'm a full-time content creator and coach for all ranks iron through to Challenger. So if you want more information of what a coaching session with me will look like, you can find more information by following the link in the video description below.
While you're in the description, you'll also find the link to my Patreon, where I post all of the recordings of my best coaching sessions in full. With collections sorted by role and rank, including sessions where I've coached for professional level teams, you can get a glimpse into what pro level League of Legends look like from the inside. No matter what you're looking for, you'll easily be able to find something that's going to help you improve, no matter your rank. Slaying the Void Grubs gives a buff that increases the damage that all allies deal to towers, scaling with the amount of Void Grubs slain, making even support and tank champions a viable split push threat. This damage applied comes in the form of true damage, meaning it's most useful for finishing off lower health towers towards the end of laning phase, while towers still have their turret plates. Since these towers gain increasingly high resistances when low on plating, and now the Rift Turret doesn't spawn until after 14 minutes, this is the only way to finish off low health towers and get that extra plating gold. With the buff itself giving no effect outside of increasing tower damage, it's only useful when your team is in a position where you're likely to be hitting towers, with this generally being when you have an early lead. Now, another factor to consider is the nature of your team's champions. Lane-dominant, long-range champions are most of the time going to be gaining early leads, putting themselves in a position where they want to finish off a tower with just a few plates left. Our first replay is a perfect example of this type of game. Now, going into the first grub spawn, not only is my team 3-0, but we have a Victor mid and a Caitlyn Lux bot lane, all of which are long-range siege champions who can get a small amount of chip damage on the tower with each wave. So because of this, I make sure my priority is to get that first grub spawn. Now coming up in the second spawn, you'll see mid and bot have naturally made some progress on the enemy towers, especially Victor, who's naturally starting to get the enemy mid tower low due to his early lead and the nature of playing a long range champion. Then after a scrappy contest with some kills traded backwards and forwards, my team manages to get all three of the objectives. Now look at the result of this. The combination of a long-range champion, early game lead, and 6 stacks of this buff mean that my Victor has almost entirely taken out the enemy mid tower by 14 minutes, even through the incredibly high armor the tower has when low health. On Victor, a champion with very, very low tower damage. Now compare this to our second replay and you'll see that my strategy is completely different because of the game's circumstances. Now starting off at the first grub spawn, you'll see I'm actually heading there for the contest. The first grub spawn is incredibly valuable in terms of XP, and so should be a part of your path on almost every jungler regardless of your strategy. Although early game pathing around this camp is something we'll be covering later in this video. You'll see though that I'm slightly too late for the objective and I end up losing it to Xin Zhao, although there is a nice triple kill at the back end for my team as a consolation prize, so it's not all that bad. Now we jump forward a couple minutes to where I got a nice gank onto Syndra and you'll notice we're only seconds away from the grub respawn. With the enemy mid laner dead, and the enemy team at a threat of having 6 stacks of the buff, it would only make sense to transition this kill into the objective to deny the enemy from getting it. But instead of doing that, Katarina and I are running bot side. But why? To answer that, we have to look at the scoreboard moments before the mid gank. Now this game is similar to the last game, where our team is ahead, primarily our mid laner. But different to last game is our composition is full of divers. Whilst the goal of long-range champions like Victor and Caitlyn is to slowly siege down towers, the goal of champions like Katarina, Xayah, and Alistar is to dive their opponent and deal the tower damage afterwards when the opponent is dead. A dive comp that is ahead like this can get a reward that far exceeds the value of the buff the grub camp gives you by instead tower diving and swinging the gold massively in your favor. Now sure, the enemy Xin Zhao got 6 grubs this game, but knowing he was topside in order to take it enabled me to make this dive onto his bot lane, getting half of the bot tower anyway. And with the gold lead from that dive, we were able to do it again in just 1.5 minutes later. Now the massive gold lead that these 2 dives have given me and my team means that the enemy team will never be able to hit a tower and make use of this buff anyway. Fast forwarding to 30 minutes into the game, you can see the enemy still has not touched a tower one single time since getting that 6 scrub buff, making it completely useless to them. Now in this game, I came to this decision for 2 reasons. Because trading grubs for gold put my team far enough ahead that it made the grubs buff useless. But also my team composition is one that doesn't rely on this buff to achieve its win condition, diving enemy towers. But for a team composition with long-range carries that can chip enemy towers, the grubs are valuable not only because of the damage over time they inflict to towers, but also because of the grub's second buff that unlocks at 5 stacks. This causes you to occasionally spawn a mini version called Void Mites. These Void Mites will attack enemy towers with you. But very importantly, the reason these Void Mites are so valuable to long-range champions is because they will run into melee range of towers and take tower shots, keeping your minions alive for longer. Which is important because without minions around, towers gain a buff, reducing the damage they take by 80%. Having your minion wave stay alive longer to apply this passive is useful in any situation, but is especially noticeable once you're grouped up for a siege and have 5 members of your team spawning these mites. You can spawn up to 10 mites at once, over doubling the size of a minion wave, giving long-range champions more time to hit towers with each wave and get chip damage. Just look at the size of this absolute army that blue team has with them. Now importantly though, you need to actually be able to hit the enemy tower at least once to begin this spawning of mites, meaning this is only really something available to long-range champions, if there are enemies defending, making this aspect of the buff far more useful to siege compositions, like the one in the first replay that we looked at. Now let me take you back to something I said earlier in this video. The first grub spawn is incredibly valuable in terms of XP, although early game pathing around this camp is something we'll be covering later in this video. This is the main thing that separates grubs from dragon. The grub camp is incredibly XP efficient for the time it takes for you to clear it, and it can be easily soloed by just about any jungler in the game. Now a simple path that is starting to become more meta due to the importance of this camp is to start with a simple 6 camp full clear starting on a buff. Then out of base you'll have time to take the first 2 respawning camps of your second clear before running straight to the grub camp. This will have you arriving at the grubs at exactly 5 minutes when the camp spawns. But here's where things become interesting. This combination of camps will have you at level 4, but killing just one of the grubs will give you level 5. Because the XP you receive from a camp scales with champion level, grubs will actually give you double the XP for the first grub you kill when compared to the other 2 once you've hit level 5. Meaning if you're able to just sneak one of these before being pushed off by the enemy, it is still XP efficient. I even suggest that if you need to, smite the first grub to quickly get this level up, so you're prepared for a fight, or can take the last 2 more quickly. With this level lead over the enemy jungler, you should in most situations be able to push the enemy out of smite range for the last 2 grubs anyway, so you probably won't need your smite. Doing this clear in practice tool with no leash and no scuttle crabs, I was able to get level 6 just after 7 minutes, which is insanely fast. By including scuttle crab and a leash, we could move this time sooner. But I have one more path to show you that I'm going to let play out in the background for the remainder of this video. By starting raptors and prioritizing sequencing of my smaller camps over my buffs, making sure to double scuttle, take my first 2 respawning camps again and finishing at the grubs on spawn, I was able to hit level 6 at 6 minutes 24. Now imagine Lilia ulting the enemy jungler on his first buff respawn. Enemy jungler would be mind blown. This is really the power of early grubs. They are team-wide objectives that gives the time and XP efficiency of a jungle camp, which is why first grubs should be prioritized regardless. Not to mention the buff itself is in most people's opinion pretty overtuned right now. So to recap everything for you. Prioritize first grub spawn if you can contest. Even if it means that you only get one of them, it'll still be worth your time. When it comes to second spawn, consider the game state as well as your team's composition. If you have ranged champions or want to finish towers before platings fall, take the grubs. But don't be afraid to give them in exchange for gold if you think you can deny the enemies from hitting towers and you think that your team doesn't specifically need that extra turret killing power, like in a dive comp. Now before you go, I want to let you know I'll personally be running my own bootcamp about all League of Legends fundamentals and the changes this new season has brought to the game. With classes spread out over 4 weeks, I can promise you'll come out the other side with a massive boost to your knowledge and your rank. With it being just $20 to attend all 4 weeks of classes, this is a way for you to meet me, ask any questions you have, and benefit from my coaching for just a fraction of the price. Classes start in just 2 weeks, and a link will be in the video description below. Thanks for watching.